welcome to another Checigirl Creations DIY video. So today I will be creating in my A5 art journal, and this video is for Shawn Petite's creative team. So I will be using her stencils as usual. And I'm just picking out a few stencils that I thought I might use. And this stencil you can see here, I haven't used it yet, so I wanted to use it today. And I'm going to be spraying through the smallest one. There's two sizes. And the sprays I'm using are made out of food coloring and some water. And I'm going to be using a green and a blue. And when I spray through it, I'm flipping it over to create a ghost print. And this didn't have to be too perfect. I knew this was just the initial background, so I didn't mind if it was quite splodgy. And I just dabbed some of that remaining color after it dried for a little bit, like air dried, with a paper towel. And I'm just picking out some colors, some pink colors there. And first I'm going to stick down some papers. So I'll be using some book paper and some paper from the packaging from one of my mixed media boxes. I believe that's the June one. And for those of you watching on my channel, I shall link a playlist to all my mixed media boxes in an iCard in the top right hand corner. So I just wanted a little bit of those papers because what I kind of planned out, I was going to then go over with a bunch of paint and then try to pick up some of the paint through the stencil so the papers would have kind of shine through the stenciled image. And then you'll see me do that in a little bit once this is dry. And I'm using some PVA glue and a palette knife to stick those papers down. Oh yes, I also brought in some tissue paper, again from the packaging from mixed media boxes. If you've seen a few of my previous videos, you'll know that I'm trying to use up as much of those papers as possible. And I thought I would bring in some gold, some green, and some kind of dark teal tissue paper. Just to create some more texture, and as well the tissue paper is slightly translucent, which is nice because you can see the papers through it, and that's what the kind of look I was going for this layer of texture. And just a few more bits of scrap paper. That scrap is from when I was making Christmas cards. And then I'll let that dry. And it wasn't completely dry yet, but it was dry enough for me to go in with the paints. So that is like a sap green by Crawford & Black. It's a very dark green. And I'm using a paintbrush for that, as you can see. And first I was going in with the stencil, but I thought I would put all the paint on in one go. So I think that's Medium Yellow by Reeves, and then that's Blue Mist by Royal and Langnickel. And now for the stenciling part. So I'm using a paper towel. I know some people use baby wipes and stuff. And when I did it, it didn't show through much. I'm thinking maybe I should have used some darker paints. But to be honest, I wasn't really liking the look, and because the stencil was so big, it was lifting up some paint around the stenciled image. So now I'm just going to use up the excess paint on my paintbrush, and you can see I just did that. And I thought maybe I needed a bigger stenciled image instead of such a detailed one. So I'm using this one. It's from Mini Doodles, I think it's called. And that worked out a lot better. And I was turning the mask so that the image wouldn't always look the same. And I felt like I wanted some more texture. So I'm going in with some light yellow green and some gold, and using the brush to stencil through this. So it's quite thick and it's not extremely detailed, but it gave me the texture I was looking for. And then again, wiping off some of that excess paint on the page. And then I'm going to let that dry, and I dry that with a heat gun as well, just to make sure it's nice and dry. Okay, and oh, but before I dried it, sorry, I thought maybe it would be interesting to draw in some lines and stuff. So first I'm just kind of scribbling around. Sometimes I'm following the design of the stencil, and then I'm going to kind of carve in some leaf shapes, all using my palette knife. And I thought that created a really nice texture because you can't always see it very well unless you look close up, and you'll see that in photos at the end. But it's just really nice background, and I think I'll have to do that technique again. So I still really wanted to stick with this flower image, so I thought I might as well just stencil in like the kind of normal way. So I'm taking a makeup sponge and some black paint, I think that's by Sea White, and I thought I would stencil that in a few times. And I like to have things in uneven numbers, normally in 3, so I'm just putting it at different levels so it doesn't look all the same. Especially, I didn't really want to flip the stencil over because it's better to stencil on the shiny side of Shawn's stencils instead of like the more porous side, because then it's easier to wash off. And I pulled out that stencil. I don't actually end up using it. I just thought I would. And I knew I wanted to add a word, so I'm just pulling out all the stencils now. And this one is called In the Garden. And I'm just going to use some of those like leafy designs and stencil a few in. I felt that the page was a bit empty, so instead of adding more of those big flowers, I'm just going to add these little designs as if it's like a garden or more like a meadow. And all of that is black because I really did want a kind of silhouette feel, and it was really coming together at this stage. And this is when I was thinking, oh yes, I'm really liking this, because before I was like, oh boy, this is a hot mess and I'm not too sure how I'm going to fix it. And when I'm stenciling the images, especially if I'm reusing one, I'm twisting and turning it so it looks slightly different. And then I'm looking through the words and I picked the word flourish. And again, I stenciled that in black. That came out kind of messy, and some of the stencil images did, but I'll outline it and make it look more detailed later on. And you can see I didn't use the butterfly stencil. I felt that would make it too busy, and I really liked it how it was. And now I'm just using some of that excess paint from my sponge to give it a nice border. And I felt that really grounded the page. And I apologize for not zooming in. I completely forgot to. And now I wanted to add some splashes because I still felt like the page was a bit stark, but I didn't want any more images. So I added some black splashes with a paintbrush, and I felt that looked a lot better. Oh, and this tag you'll see in a second, which I'm stenciling on. I've been working on this tag for a while. I'm always chucking excess paint on it. You've probably seen it in a previous video. So I was just using that excess black paint that was on my palette to stencil through and to see how that would look. And then I'll just put that aside for another time because I didn't end up finishing it. So I'll just see what else I can add to it. Oh, I added some splashes as well to it as well. Okay, so now I'm bringing out my calligraphy inks. I do love working with inks. I just haven't used it in a while. And I pulled out the gold. Now the gold, because I like the kind of gold minerals, it all settles at the bottom. So I have to give it a good mix with my palette knife. And also the water evaporated, so I had to spray some water in. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it's all right, and it still worked really well. And some of that gold that was left over on the palette knife, I just kind of rubbed it on the edge of the page. I thought that would look quite nice, and it did look really nice to have that kind of thin gold border. So now I've got my calligraphy pen, and I struggled for a little bit doodling because it was kind of thick, and also I realized, wait a second, it's too thick. So I added some water later on, and you'll see me like kind of going in and touching in a few areas that I felt was a little bit light. But yeah, so I'm just outlining everything. I knew I wanted to add highlights, but I wanted to outline everything. I didn't want to outline everything with white, so I thought the gold would look really nice. And you can kind of see it on camera. You can't see it as well as in person, sadly. Hopefully the photos you'll be able to see it, but it doesn't really capture how nice and shiny it was, especially when you tip it to the light. And it just makes everything pop off the page nicely. That's what I love about adding detail. It just makes everything pop, and it kind of brings everything together, and then you come a lot closer to finishing your work of art. So I'm going to outline everything. And this calligraphy pen, I don't know what size it is, but it's got quite a thin nib. And I always use this one for adding details on my pages, or like adding a signature. And the reason I enjoy using a calligraphy pen is I find it's not as fussy as like a fine liner or a marker or something, because sometimes I can go in even if the page is slightly damp, and in some areas it probably was because I was really impatient when I was doing this page. But it doesn't matter because I can't ruin the nib unless I maybe go over something that's like really coarse. But even if I'm going over an extremely textured surface, I do just go a little bit slower, and again, it just can't be damaged as a nib on a pen can. And I've been using this calligraphy pen nib for ages now, years really. I've been using it since I got those inks actually, and it's been a few years, and it just works really well. So that's my favorite way of adding detail, especially on textured pages, because you may not be able to see it, but when I drew in those marks with the palette knife, when the paint was still wet, it created quite a bit of texture. And on this one, you can see the gold is a little bit stronger because that's when I added some more water. So I'll go in and touch in a few areas, like those leaves. I found it was just didn't look as good. And I just added it in a few more areas just so everything would look more the same, because that one flower was standing out a lot more than everything else. And now I'm going around the letters, and I'll fill in the bottom of the U there. I like to do that when I've stenciled one of Shawn's words, just so it looks a little bit more uniform. I'm going right around it. I was being a little bit more careful though when I was going around the letters, just so it'll be legible. Especially since I did such a messy job of stenciling it. And now I'm just adding some splashes from the calligraphy pen. They were quite big. And I do add some more splashes like later on. Oh, and I'm going around this one of the tag as well. I completely forgot to take a photo actually of this, but it's not finished just yet. So I'll have to go in and add something else because I feel as if there's something missing on that. Oh, and the word I stenciled on there was faith. Okay, and I'm adding some more splashes. Felt as if it wasn't enough. If you don't know already, I love gold, so the more gold the better. And here's a quick close-up. And now for the highlights, the best part. So this is a Uniball Signal gel pen, and I'm just going like where the sun might hit. I always put my highlights like on the right of things. I feel as if the sun's always coming from the right. And yeah, so I'm just going to add in these highlights, and then I will add in my signature using the gel pen as well, and add some white splashes just to kind of brighten up the page, because it was bright, but I felt as if it was still a little bit dark. In some areas it just needed like a pop, and even though I really was liking how it looked with the gold, because at one point I was like, should I add highlights? But the highlights really finished everything off and made everything pop. And I'm going in quite messily with the highlights. I'm just kind of putting them like where I know they would be, but I'm not being very specific with it. And I was trying my best not to cover up too much of the gold because it would still shine through, but the Uniball Signal pen is quite strong and opaque, which is really good. So I didn't want it to cover up the gold too much, so I'm kind of highlighting like inside of the gold lines, if you know what I mean. Okay, so that is pretty much it for the highlights. I will add, oh yes, I did go and add a really quick border around the page and adding my signature, and that's it. So I'm really glad and really happy with how that turned out. I love it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to subscribe to Shawn's channel. Check her out if you're watching on my channel, and please do check me out if you're watching on Shawn's channel. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, click the bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a new video. And yeah, oh, and please do comment below if you enjoyed the videos. And please do check out the other creative team members. They have some wonderful videos, and don't forget to subscribe to their channels as well. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you join me again for another Checigirl Creations video. Bye!